恭敬大德圣听，为此法会，集结众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死。离苦得乐，殊真无生。Well, the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attempt bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto sucheto ye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受者，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Namo, quelling disasters, ending life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, ending life, Medicine Master Buddha. Medicine Master does come one. 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 Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, Amitofo, welcome back. We are at lecture number 181. Okay, let me get my slides. Okay, so we're still going to continue with looking at causes and conditions, and I've received some feedback. Apparently, some of you find it very interesting that we are going into, I think the words used were basic. One word was basic, the other word was interesting and useful to know. And one of the people who gave me the feedback was my own mother. So I shall not go against the feedback. Okay, so let me see, where are we today? We're going to continue. I'm not going to give a summary from last time. It's already in the YouTube. So we're just going to continue with actually, I was hoping by today we could finish this section, but since I had a feedback and uh, I have decided to to create more slides from the sutra that I'm referencing, which is the Great Exposition on Cause and Effect. That's the name of this sutra that we have, the Kama Vibhanga. Yeah, so we have a lot more slides, okay? And some stories as well. All right, so here at this part, the Buddha says, what kind of action or karma leads a person to be poor and generous? So if you see anyone who's poor and generous, the Buddha says it's because in a previous life, they offered lavishly or generously, and they make it a habit to make offerings to animals and people, but the the subject of their offerings are not worthy recipients of offerings. Okay, that means people without virtue. For example, you give to robbers, you give to thieves, you give to people undeserving of offerings, and you don't give to people deserving of offerings. So Buddha says if one is reborn as a human, one will be reborn into a poor family and will not be able to lead a life of abundance in food and possessions and will suffer hardship. But even though one does not have enough clothing or food, one is still generous. That's because the habit of generosity carries from your past lives. So someone like this, who I think the right way to understand this is a person who neglects giving to those he should give to, and instead chooses, it's a choice that they make, that they prefer to give to people undeserving of offerings. Yeah. Okay. Now, the people who are poor and stingy, well, if you abandon virtuous people, virtuous friends, that means you have no one to encourage you to do good things like engage in generosity. And not only that, you on your own accord, out of your own decision, you don't make any offerings. Okay. But at the same time, you're a good person. You don't intentionally carry out any evil actions. So in that case, when you're reborn as a human, you'll be born into a poor family, lacking in food, possessions, and you will have to suffer. You will have to work really hard to obtain clothing and food, but you are also stingy. Yeah, so that's the karmic cost for someone who's poor and stingy. Okay, now we come to a part where there's some interesting stories. This is about people who have exhausted their lifespans, but not the potential of their past actions of karma. So, what does this mean? It means that your karma, your karmic consequence, is that the right way to say it? Yeah, your karmic, your um, you okay, your lifespan ends before you exhaust your karma. That's another way to put it. Yeah, that means there's still karmic force behind that particular karmic seed that comes into fruition, but your lifespan ends before that. So what happens? Buddha says, suppose that someone, although having passed away in the hell realm, is subsequently reborn in hell, or having passed away as an animal is reborn as an animal, or ghost realm is reborn as a ghost, etc., etc. So it means that if you did something to deserve, to cause your next rebirth to be in the hell, and if your lifespan in hell ends before the karmic retribution is up, guess what? You have to, because of the outstanding karmic retribution, you get reborn under the same circumstances again and again until the karma is exhausted. Yeah. So there are few stories. Say one of them is there was a very poor householder who was very attached to his house, because I guess because he was poor and the house was his only main possession. I guess you don't have to be poor to be attached to your house, but this particular person was poor, was very attached to his house, and he died. And what happened was, at the moment he died, there was an ox outside his house. And this ox had an ulcer, that means had a wound on its shoulder. Okay, so this ox standing outside the house had a wound on his shoulder. And this poor person, okay, both literally and figuratively, when he died, guess what? He was, because he was so attached to his house, he couldn't leave the house. So he was reborn as a maggot in the wound of the ox. Okay, and that was because his mind couldn't leave the house. And immediately after he was reborn as a maggot, a crow came and ate him up. All right, and because his karmic, how you say, retribution did not end, he was reborn as a maggot again and again for 7 times, until because after 7 times the karmic um, retribution had ended. So that's one story. So be careful of your attachments. All right. Yeah, you just never know what might happen. There are other stories like this too. I think there was okay, I shall not try to recall from memory. I will tell you what I have. So this other story is known as the story of Brahmin Vasakara. So this Brahmin, when you read the sutras and you see the word Brahmin, it means either someone from the higher caste or someone of good, is a good person, usually, either one. So this Brahmin saw Venerable Mahakashyapa on Vulture Peak flying in the sky. And this particular Brahmin was close to Devadatta and Prince Ajata Satru. Okay, if you recall, few lectures ago, Prince Ajata Satru committed certain karmic errors, and he was supposed to be born in Avicii hell. But because he had repented and confessed his errors to the Buddha, he was an example in this very same sutra where he was reborn in the hell, but immediately passed away and got reborn somewhere else. So that's an opposite example of exhausting lifespan, but not the potential of karma. So coming back to a Brahmin, this Brahmin did not like monks. He did not like the Buddha. Why? Because he was friends with Devadatta and Prince Ajata Satru. He was in bad company. So when he saw Venerable Mahakashyapa soaring in the air, he had a thought in his mind. He said, I think not just a thought, he made an insulting comment. He said, this monk flies through the air from mountain peak to mountain peak, just like a monkey swings from tree to tree. His mind was filled with hatred. He made this comment. And then later, someone asked the Buddha, and I think this Brahmin was there. He said, oh, this Brahmin made this result, and asked the Buddha, what will be the karmic result of making such a comment? So then the Buddha replied, well, because he made these abusive words, not just about anyone, but about Venerable Mahakashyapa, who was an Arhat then. He said this particular Brahmin will be reborn as a monkey for 500 lifetimes. So when Vasakara, the Brahmin, heard that, he became really frightened. And then because he was scared, he took refuge in the Buddha. He asked the Buddha, he says, when will his karmic deed become exhausted? So the Buddha said, during these 500 lifetimes, you will be reborn in Rajagra in the Jambu continent, the rose apple continent, which is where we are, known as Jambu Vidma. And it says that, let me see, Vishtirais and delicious. It says, from there, leaving this incarnation, you will reach heaven. So for 500 lifetimes, he will be born as a monkey, and then he will, after that, go to heaven, maybe because of his past good deeds. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that's one story. So be careful who you pass a comment about. And then finally, the third story that we have is very similar to a story that Shufu told about, I'm not sure if it's the if it's the same story, but the details are different, but it's very, very similar. And this version of the story starts with Venerable Mahamoggallana. Okay. And when you hear this story, you will know what other story I'm referring to. So Venerable Mahamoggallana was walking through a place called Magadha, and he was going on his alms round. And then he walked past a house where there was the husband together with the wife, and then the wife was holding their son in his lap, and they were eating a meal of fish. And then next to them sat a dog who they were feeding the fish bones to the dog. I'm not sure how accurate this story is, because anyone who has a dog knows that you're never supposed to feed your dog fish bones because it gets stuck in the throat. Anyway, then when the husband, the householder, saw Venerable Mahamoggallana standing there for alms, he told the Venerable Mahamoggallana, he said, "I'm sorry, here nobody gives alms to beggar," and he shoot Venerable Mahamoggallana away. Okay. Now, also in that house, sitting there all the time, there was another man who came from a different country, and he knew who Venerable Mahamoggallana was. Okay, he knew of that he was an Arahant. And then when he saw what happened, he was amazed, and he said, "Oh dear, this venerable, esteemed, highly respected monk is the foremost among those possessing magical powers. He has tamed the kings of the Nagas, that means the dragons, Nanda and Upananda. He shook the divine palace with his left toe, and through that, the king of gods, Indra, marveled." This is Lord Chakra. "He has traversed the realm of the trichilocosm, that means the Buddha world, in the blink of an eye." And he says, knowing all this, he says it is astounding that Venerable Mahamoggallana is just dismissed by this family, and not offered any alms, because Venerable Mahamoggallana is such a great person, So Venerable Mahamoggallana, knowing what was going on in this man's mind, knew it was the right time to give him a teaching. So he replied. He said, "That is actually not astonishing or incredible." Then the man said, "Well, then, what else is astonishing?" Now, why did Venerable Mahamoggallana stop and speak to this man? Because he knew that this man was a bit tired of samsara, of the rounds of rebirth. So he told the householder, he said, "Okay, well, what you see in front of you, this householder who is eating the fish curry, the fish that he's eating was his father. His father would frequently go to the pond behind the house and would catch a lot of fish. And when he died, he was reborn as a fish in that very pond. So his son too would go to the back and catch the fish to eat. And they have done it hundreds of times. And he has caught and eaten his father hundreds of times. All right. So he said that's the first astonishing thing. And then say the second astonishing thing is you see the dog here. This dog used to be the householder's mother. So the father became a fish, okay, and caught and eaten hundreds of times, apparently. The dog used to be the mother. And how did she become reborn as a dog? She was overpowered by greed and never made an offering to anyone, just like her son. And she never safeguarded her ethical conduct, but instead only hoarded her own possessions for her own family. She didn't care about anyone else. And then after she died, her thoughts were still attached to the house. Why? Because the house and the possessions were meant a lot to her when she was alive. So as a result, she was born as a dog to guard the house. And then, and this is not the first time she has been reborn as a dog. She has been reborn as a dog ever since she died. And he says the dog circles around the house on the outside for the whole night to guard the house. Why? Afraid that someone will come and steal her former possessions. And he said, if you think that's astonishing, Well, it says the baby sitting in the lap of the mother used to be the wife's lover. Okay, so the wife holding the baby. Okay, the baby in his past life was the wife's former lover. And when the householder found out that his wife was sleeping with another man, okay, so this particular person, the husband, okay, the existing husband, the current husband, okay, it gets a bit complicated. So the existing husband found out that his wife was having an affair. Okay, so what he do? He went and murdered the other man out of jealousy. And that murdered man, because he was still attached to his lover, which is this man's wife, when he was reborn in his former lover's body. So he was reborn in his womb. So remember, Mahagalana told the man, he said, so the meat that they eat is their father's, or rather the fish that they eat is the father. The one to whom they toss the fish bones is the mother. The enemy, okay, which is the man's, the one having the affair with his wife and who was killed, is the one they cradle in their lap. So he told the man, therefore it is only right to feel disgust for samsara, for the rounds of rebirth, because this is truly astonishing, truly astounding. So I think you all know what story I'm referring to. There was the one told by Shufu, and I think it's found in somewhere else. There was a wedding going on, and there were 7 generations in the pot, and the son was beating the drum, and the drum was made from the skin of a donkey, which was the son's father, and so very similar. But this is a Theravada version. Okay, now let me see. There is a comment in Chinese, okay, which I can't read, but I have ChatGPT. All right.
Sure, it's yeah.
Yes.
The person asked if there was any Chinese translation.
Oh, this particular sutra, Chinese translation. You know
Uh,
what?
I think.
You mean
Oh,
the Zoom or the sutra?
that's a good question.
Can you ask Alex? Do you know?
Okay,
You want to ask in Chinese?
so I speak to her.
Yeah.
请海燕师兄，您是问中文翻译这个讲座还是这个经文？I can reply to her in the chat and maybe we
Okay.
can carry on.
Okay. I put it in the chat, and then she can check the chat out. Hold on. Okay. Can you tell her it's in the chat? Yeah. If she has any problem, I can send the sutra to her. Okay. All right. Where were we? Okay. We've gone through this. Oh, if she asks which particular taisho is the actual translation, I'm not sure. But apparently it comes from those are the associated sutras from there. It says Taisho 80. Yeah, number 80 is the Chinese equivalent of this text. Yeah, so you can try looking at that. All right. Okay. All right. Now the Buddha says, yeah.
I do have a question about the Brahmin who said that Mahakashapa was like a monkey. He actually said it out loud, and
yeah, apparently he uttered the comment. Yeah, he said it out loud. So he didn't just think it. He said it. Yeah.
And if he thought it, that still has its karmic consequences, right?
Yes, but not as bad as uttering it.
Okay.
Yeah,
没错的。
usually not as bad as saying it out loud.
Because but the thought itself places a seed in you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor.
Just thinking about it already is why the thought itself is bad. If you look at the Earth Store Sutra, there's a passage in the Earth Store Sutra that says something goes along the lines of living beings in Jambu Vidpa, every thought is an offense. It's because it sounds very severe, and it is because that every thought that we create is from our conscious mind, the sixth consciousness. And because of that, it carries a karmic seed that goes with it. And those karmic seeds can only result in rebirth in samsara. So that the language sounds severe, but if you look at it from a larger vantage point, it is, because every stirring of the mind only contributes to further rebirth, which is why understanding right intention from the Noble Eightfold Path is very, very important, because the way to mitigate we can't stop our thinking, but the only way to mitigate our thoughts is to use right intent, is to have right intention, which consists of loving renunciation, loving kindness, and compassion behind all our thoughts. Okay, let me see. Sri Ling says there's something wrong with her line. She's unable to get into Zoom. Okay, let me hold on. All of you are not experiencing any problems, right?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I'll just let her know. Okay. Now coming back to any more questions? Anyone?
So, Pastor, if our aim is can we aim to be watchful of our thoughts?
That's what you're supposed to do.
Okay? So that's the point that's the purpose of our precepts, to be watchful of our thoughts all the time.
Yes, excellent. The precepts there are various ways to metaphors, like a mirror to reflect your thoughts, or like a gate, to prevent you from to catch, like a barrier to catch your thoughts. Yeah. So the precepts are supposed to help you be mindful of yourself.
Okay. And that's how you get samadhi, is to being watchful.
No.
Indirectly, yes. Yes, Miss Alan, you want to share? Oh,
sorry,
no?
I didn't realize that my mic was on.
Okay.
Sorry, Pastor.
Okay, that means we heard your thoughts and you said no, right? You want to share?
Oh, I said no because I mean I may be wrong. I think I must be wrong, but to me, to be in samadhi means you really must observe, must meditate, and must really observe. Just concentrate on breathing, concentrate on one thought, rather than just observing precepts alone.
Okay,
I mean,
you're not wrong. Okay,
yeah.
you are definitely not wrong. Anyone else?
Puzzle?
Yes.
Is it the precept? Could you say precept and vows look similar? So what is different between precepts and vows? And then the second question is, does all Buddhist layperson must make vows?
Okay. We handle your first question. The first question first. When you said precepts and vows are similar, did you say that I said that?
No, I mean what I think, is it similar?
Oh, okay. No. They're very different. Absolutely different. Precepts precepts are, how you say, guidelines to help us achieve our intention. For example, if you want to be reborn minimum as human, all right, you observe the 5 precepts. If that's your intention. If your intention is to come back in the lower realms, for example, animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, or the hell realm, then you can go against the 5 precepts and you are quite guaranteed to be born in the lower realms. So anyone who wants to come back at least a human, okay, at the very minimum, a human, observe the 5 precepts well. That's the cause and effect of how it works. And if you want to achieve more than human, then you can observe the 8 precepts or the 10 precepts. That leads you into the category of also ending birth and death. And then some people, they want to become Buddhas. So what do? They take the Bodhisattva precepts, because the Bodhisattva precepts is helps you act, behave, and think like a Bodhisattva. So that's how you eventually become a Buddha. And for people who just want to end birth and death, okay, they just want to end birth and death, they are not thinking about becoming a Buddha, then they leave home and they take either the 10 precepts of a novice monk or novice nun, or they take the full 200, I think 240 something precepts of a monk and 354, 55 precepts of a nun. Yeah, so that's how precepts work. It is based on what you want, your intention in life. Yeah, vows are different. Vows are promises that you make to your own Buddha nature, to help you achieve your also intention, also based on intention, but it's to help you achieve your goals in practice. So for example, if you are always getting angry and then you get into trouble, you get arrested, or you get into fights because you always lose your patience, and then you can make a vow or promise saying, from now on, I want to practice patience, or I want to practice loving kindness. Why? Because I don't want to get angry with people anymore. I always think people are stupid. People are always blocking me or hindering me or making me irritated. And then you realize it's because you don't have loving kindness. So you make a vow. And then that vow, it kind of behaves like a precept as well, but you do it for yourself. I mean, you impose it on yourself. And through the vow, if your vow is strong enough, the karmic seeds that you plant, and then the mechanism becomes the same as precepts, where there's a perfuming nature of that when you make that vow, that hopefully if it's strong enough, it will affect your daily life. And it will remind you to develop loving kindness. Okay, so yes, it's similar, but also very different at the same time. Okay, now coming back to, okay, you had a second question, right? What was the second question? Tai, are you there?
Oh, yes, Pastor.
Ah,
So, okay,
you,
now I understand between the precept and the vows. Okay, that's all.
oh, that's all? No second question already?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for making my life easier. All right, now coming to Alex's question. All right. Now, if you look at your screen, let me make it larger. Oh, no. Let me go. Okay, there's this statement. He says, when a person acts in violation of the precepts, he excites and reinforces the very same mental factors his practice of meditation is intended to eliminate. So basically, if you don't follow the precepts, you are making it very, very hard to meditate. You are fighting against what your meditation is supposed to achieve. And why is that? Okay, now you look. This formula is given by the Buddha. Okay, the Buddha, and there are few sutras that the Buddha gives this formula, and I don't remember the title of the sutra. Something. The title of the sutra is something like you don't need to wish for it. It happens automatically. So what happens automatically? The Buddha says if you hold precepts well, Okay, if you understand the spirit of the precepts and you hold it because of your concern for other living beings, not just for yourself, but for in your relationships, then the Buddha says you don't have to wish to be free of remorse. Why? Because you don't do something and regret later. You will naturally be free from remorse. Then the Buddha says for someone who's free of remorse, okay, this person is naturally joyful. They are glad. Why? Because you have nothing to regret. Someone knocks on your door, you're not afraid. Whether it's the police or is someone looking to settle a debt or anything like that. Why? Because that's not how you live your life. Okay. And then when you try to meditate, okay, when you have joy and gladness, and then you try to meditate, you will experience rapture. Rapture is what? Rapture, I think I mentioned this, right? In last week or 2 weeks before. Officially, it's known as horripilation, which means your mokin chang, your hair stands on end. I'm not sure how you say it in Cantonese, but this is when your chi starts to move in your body, and you don't have any how you say blockage, or your body is trying to clear itself of any chi blockages. So when you experience rapture, it's a very comfortable feeling. You feel light, you feel strong, you feel full of energy. You feel as if you can jump onto the roof of a 2-story house. That's how you feel. You feel full of vitality. Yeah. And when that happens, your body doesn't fight against you. You can just sit and sit and sit. And that's when your mind becomes very tranquil, very peaceful. Why? Because your body doesn't get in the way. Okay. So when both your body and mind does not get in the way, you feel happiness. You can just sit there and feel very, very peaceful. And that's how you get concentration. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you look at bottom right. The sutra is AN 11.2 is known, the title is known as Making a Wish. The Buddha says if you hold the precepts, you don't have to make a wish to be free of remorse. You naturally will be free of remorse. And then it's of course, the whole process of meditation, according to the Buddha, is a causal effect. So most people approach meditation as a skill. They think that they have to develop a skill in meditation. But that's only half the truth. From the way the Buddha explained why precepts is so important, and this formula that you see on the screen is precept, samadhi, and wisdom. Okay, this is how precepts leads to samadhi and leads to wisdom.
Sure.
Yes,
So,
I like.
there's the 3 learning, the 戒定慧, as in precepts, concentration, and wisdom. So it's actually on this path here that you show, right? So
Yes.
it starts with precept and then concentration and then wisdom and deliverance. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this is directly from the Buddha. Yeah. And where we differ from, say, the other traditions that practice meditation, like Taoism and the yogis, is between concentration and the wisdom of seeing things as they are. So what happens is that concentration, they look for other things like spiritual powers, or they look for immortality, longevity, or they look for the higher stages of dhyana, and that they think that is immortality. But the Buddha, before the Buddha became the Buddha, when he was still the prince and he left the palace, he encountered his first 2 teachers who taught him the highest 2 states of pure concentration that the conscious mind can achieve. Okay, so there are 4 dhyanas, and then there are the 4 highest states of samadhi. And the Buddha mastered the last 2 stages. And the Buddha realized that is the limit of the human consciousness. You can meditate to the ends of the world, okay? You can never, your mind, your conscious mind can never become more pure than those 2 states of samadhi. And then the Buddha realized that those states are very pure, but the Buddha realized that it did not lead to concentration. The Buddha realized that it did not lead to ending of suffering or ending of birth and death. So the Buddha then recalled when he was young, he entered the first dhyana. It was very pleasurable, and it was a very pure kind of joy. And then the Buddha realized that from there you can observe the mind and to see here the wisdom of seeing things as they are. So that's why if you read the yogi books and the Taoist books on meditation, they're very similar to Buddhist meditation. Yeah, but the angle is different. Okay, so so you want a good story about this, which I've shared before, is Elder Master Xi, okay, our great grandmaster. Wait, our Shofu is our master, so our grandmaster, yeah, but he's a great master, so great grandmaster. So Elder Master Xi was in the Zhongnan Mountains, the White Cloud Mountains, and it was snowing, and it was time to have his meal, and he was boiling some water in a pot, and he put in some potatoes for his lunch. And then he heard a knock on the door. All right. So he heard a knock on the door. He opened the door, and he found his fellow cultivators. So around his hut, quite a bit of walking distance away, but there were other fellow cultivators on the hill with him. They came to pay him a visit because they were worried for him. They said, "Oh, we've never seen him for quite a while." So they decided to pay him a visit to see if there was anything wrong with Xin Lao Sang. And they said, "Oh, we haven't seen you for some time. We're worried about you." And Elder Master Xin didn't know what was going on. He didn't understand why they were worried. Then he said, "Well, anyway, you came at the right time because I've just been boiling some potatoes for my lunch. Why don't you come and join me?" And when he opened his pot, guess what? There were no water anymore. In fact, the fire had died out a long time ago. He didn't even notice. But when he opened the pot, the mold had grown several inches to the top of the pot. Okay, so for mold to grow, especially in cold weather, to several inches to the top of the pot, takes a long time, So what happened? Well, as Xin Lao Sang was waiting for the water to boil or for the potatoes to cook, he just naturally slipped into concentration, into samadhi. And the time passed and he wasn't aware of it. And he wasn't aware of the time, the long time that had passed. Why? Because he held the precepts well. He was a very virtuous person. He was very careful in his relationships, in his mind, how he saw people around him. He was always full of loving kindness, full of respect, full of compassion for all living beings. And so when you have that kind of kung fu, okay, you don't have to really put effort into your meditation, waiting for potatoes to cook. You can just slip into samadhi, and before you know it, your fellow cultivators all get worried because they haven't seen you for a long time. All right. So that's a story of how precepts lead to concentration and leads to wisdom. Okay. All right. Any questions about this topic? Any more questions? So for anyone who's serious about meditation, you have to observe our conduct. All right. Okay, now let me see. Did I already explain this slide? Exhausted the potential of their past actions, but not their lifespans. Okay, no, I have not. All right, what does this mean? Okay, exhausted the potential of past actions, but not lifespans means your karma has, your retribution for that particular karmic cause and condition has ended, but you're still around. Okay, your lifespan hasn't ended yet. So what happens? Well, your fortune will change for worse or for better. It depends on that particular karmic retribution, but your life will change. Okay, so the Buddha says, so someone who was happy at first may become unhappy, or the opposite, someone who was unhappy. Unhappy here means encountering suffering. So someone could be happy, become unhappy, or someone could be unhappy, become happy. In other words, this is an instance where the karma has ended, the karmic retribution has ended, but not the lifespan. Okay, all right. Now, because it's Mother's Day, all right, I would like to go slightly off topic, still in the same sutra, still related, but something slightly different. Okay, why? Because personally, I have always wanted, I've never understood I never even had the question about how parents, teachers, serving one's parents and teachers are equivalent to serving the Buddha. I just took it for granted. But I thought this would be an opportune time to share from the sutra that when the Buddha explains how it works, the mechanism of how it works. So the Buddha says, he told the monks, he says, you may think that the sea merchant's son named Maitra Yashna was just somebody else at that time. It was actually himself, the Buddha revealed. He says, I myself was at that time the sea merchant's son. Therefore, monks have faith in my words. So the Buddha is not telling you a story. The Buddha is telling a story, but it's an actual story, based on actual events. And the Buddha is not making it up. So the Buddha said, you should cultivate reverence for the Bhagavan. You should cultivate reverence for the Dharma and the Sangha. You should also revere your parents, your preceptor, and your teacher. All right. Now, why is this section beginning like halfway, like without a head? Well, because the head came a few lectures ago. Maitra Yashna was the one who finally he wanted to go with his friends to seek fortune, to cross the great sea to seek fortune, just like his father and the fathers of his friends. But his mother forbade him to go. The mother didn't give him permission. Finally, on the fourth time, he disobeyed his mother and he left. Okay, so you all remember that story? Okay, now the Buddha reveals that that man was actually him. Okay, and then the Buddha now says, whether something is done for me or for your parents, your preceptor or your teacher, there is no difference, and the karmic result is the same, experienced either in this lifetime or the next. How then is the karmic result the same in this very life? So Buddha says, okay, if you honor your parents, your preceptor, your teacher, is like honoring the Buddha, and okay, the karmic results from that can be in this life, or it could be in the next or future lives. So Buddha gives an example. He says, if it happens in this very life, okay, the Buddha gave a story. He says, once in Sravasti, some poor person saw the Buddha together with the Sangha of hearers, that means the monks of the Buddha, going for alms. And because at that moment he developed reverence in his mind, he accumulated an immense stock of merit. And since this also created the action that led him to become a king, that reverence by itself became the seed for his liberation. So the reverence was the karmic seed, and the fruit was him becoming a king. Okay, and apparently, in the seed also led him to end birth and death. I think that's what liberation means. Okay, and then the Buddha says, when this came to the Buddha's attention, the Buddha said the following verses: those who rejoice in it are no less remunerated than those who carry out the service. They are both equally entitled to a share of the merit. Mind perceives phenomena. Phenomena appear due to mind and they disappear due to mind. When one's mind is truly devoted, so will be one's speech and action in every way. I like, okay, your question. This is related to your question. Always following the person like a shadow, then one will find happiness. So what does this verse means? Buddha is saying that if you see someone doing something good, okay, and you rejoice in it, your merit can be the same. Okay, those who rejoice in in something are no less remunerated. That means your blessings are the same, or your merit is the same as the person doing it. They are both entitled equally to a share of the merit. Now, I just shared a story recently, and this story is about a chieftain called Payasi. All right, you've heard me mention Payasi before. Payasi is a very interesting person. Okay, why? Because he didn't believe in the Dharma. He didn't believe in the Buddha until he met a monk. I don't remember which monk. Remember, I think it was either Mahakashyapa or Mahamagliana, and he was taught about how you say the Dharma. But before that, Payasi would do awful experiments. He was a chieftain, and when people were sentenced to death, he would wait by them as they were sentenced to death to see if there was a soul leaving the body, like the breath. You know how like today people, they still have that kind of belief persists till today. They try to see if they can see a soul leaving the body or things like that. So that's the Payasi Sutta. But for our purposes today, when Payasi learned about generosity, he decided, oh, okay, that's good. I want to partake in generosity as well. So what did he do? He had his assistant by the name of Uta, let me hold on. I have it. Let me see. Hold on. Where is it? Utakuru? No, not Utakuru. Utakuru is the continent, just like Jambudvipa. Uttara. Yes, Uttara. So Payasi's assistant was known as Uttara. Uttara means north in the Malay language. I'm not sure in Sanskrit whether it means north. He had Uttara. So one day he heard Uttara say, in this life, I am with my master, but in my next life, I do not want to be with him. So this made Payasi very curious. So he went to ask his servant or his assistant and said, why would you say something like that? So the servant Uttara told him, he said, these things that you're making me give away are food that you won't even touch this food with your big toe, much less eat it. And you're asking me to give it away. And the cloth that you're asking me to give away, same thing. You won't even touch it with your big toe, but you're asking me to give it away. So when Payasi heard that, he reflected and he realized that, my assistant has a point. So he told his assistant, he said, from now on, only give the food that I myself would eat and only give the cloth that I myself would wear. Okay, which was very nice of him, right? So when Payasi died, he was reborn in the heaven of the four kings, and he was born in a wooden palace. Normally when you're born in the heavens, your palace is made from precious materials, and you have a whole retinue of servants of the call it nymphs and people who play musical instruments, very beautiful maidens to follow you around and do all kinds of things for you. Just like Islam, they say you are born, you have 49 virgins, something like that. Same principle. But he was born in a palace made of wood, which means a lower grade palace, and he was all alone. He didn't have any retinue to go. In other words, he didn't have many friends. Let's put it this way. And Venerable Mahamagliana would always go to the heavens for his meditation, and he found this empty palace, and there he found Payasi. And he asked the Deva, Payasi had become a Deva, that's why in the heaven. And so Payasi explained to him, he said, oh, when I gave away things, I didn't give it with my own hand, but my assistant, Uttara, who gave on my behalf, he has been born in a higher heaven. He has been born in the heaven of the 33, which is one level above where he was. And so although Uttara gave away things that did not belong to him, okay, it belonged to his master, but he gave it with care. All right, he said he gave the gifts carefully, thoughtfully with his own hands. So because of that, when he died, he was reborn in heaven of 33. Whereas Payasi, although those things belonged to him. No, they were his possessions, but because he was not as careful and not personal in giving the gifts, his rewards were not that great. Okay, so rejoicing, okay, in other people's, so even though you are just a middle person, okay, you are giving something, you're helping someone give away something that does not belong to you, rejoicing in it makes a huge difference. And why? Well, if you look at the second verse on your screen, the Buddha says, mind perceives phenomena. Phenomena is the physical world, okay? And the physical world actually is no big deal. It's the mind that that matters. So if you think about it, Buddhism is actually very democratic. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. You can still generate merit and blessings just based on your mind alone. So the Buddha says phenomena appear due to mind and they disappear due to mind. Okay, but when your mind is truly devoted, when you're really sincere, you know how to apply the virtues and the wholesome skills. Okay, and then what follows is your speech and action. This merit will follow you like a shadow, and you will find happiness. Okay, now coming back to the Buddha's past life, the Buddha says, when he honored his parent, the mother, the son of the sea merchant, experienced an individual heaven in 4 great cities. If you remember the story, he was the only survivor as they were crossing the sea. He came across an island or a continent. There was a beautiful palace with, I think, 4 goddesses, and he enjoyed himself there. And then he went, after thousands of years, he went to another place, another palace, and double. There were 8 goddesses. And then he did this 4 times. So 4, 8, 16, and then finally 32 goddesses who he spent his time with. Why? Because he obeyed his mom 4 times. Okay, his mother told him not to go, and he said, okay, 4 times. And because of that, he just said yes. All right. And he had to bear his friends were very unhappy with him, so he had to bear his friends' unhappiness and pressure from them. Okay, but 4 times he had heavenly blessings. All right. Then but if you remember the story, the final place that he went to, with he found someone sitting in a chair with knives circling above him like a fan. He kept on cutting him, and when he asked the person how he got to be there, the person told him his story. And when he heard the story, he also felt horripilation, but not the good kind of horripilation. He felt the bad kind of horripilation, because the story that he heard from the man sitting in the hell environment was exactly like his own story. The man obeyed the mother 4 times, then disobeyed the mother, crossed the sea, all the friends died, encountered exactly the same situation. Just came from a different city, that's all. So his hair also stood on end. Yeah, horripilation, but not a good, not a good time. Okay. Now, so the Buddha said this because he said the ripening of the coming fruit took place in that very life. In that single lifetime, this Maitra Yashna experienced the fruits of the karmic seed. And then the Buddha said, will one go to hell through expressing anger towards the Bhagavan and one's parents? So the Buddha gave an example of Devadatta, who had become angry with the Buddha, and he fell into the Avicii hell immediately upon his death. Some stories say that the ground opened up and swallowed up Devadatta. It doesn't matter. What matters was because he did that unforgivable act, he fell into the hells. Then the Buddha says, or there is the Prince Utraka in the city of Rauruka, in the land of Sindhu, who killed his father and consequently fell into the hell realms as well. Okay. Now the Buddha asks a question. Buddha says, is there a difference with regard to the Buddha and one's parents? Or are they not different? Why is the Buddha asking this question? Because, let me show you the slide before. Let me see. Here. Buddha says, whether something is done for me or for your parents, your preceptor, or your teacher, there is no difference and the karmic result is the same. Right? The Buddha said that. Okay, what you do for your parents, it's the same as if you're doing it for the Buddha. The karmic result is the same. Now the Buddha asks us back, if the karmic result is the same, okay, I'm paraphrasing the Buddha's question, does that mean there's no difference between the Buddha and one's parents? Anyone would like to answer? Is there a difference or no difference?
No difference.
No difference? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's see what the Buddha says. Okay, thanks, Shuiling. Good try. Okay, but I'll give you a spoiler. You're not correct. Okay, we'll see why. Okay, we'll see why. Now, the Buddha says, concerning the Bhagavan, that means the Buddha. So the Buddha is explaining the Buddha's position. He says, when you generate devotion towards the Buddha, who for many hundreds of thousands of cosmic ages, that means an uncountably long time, he has accumulated a stock of merit generated by his roots of virtue. He has taught the Dharma to those who did not understand the Dharma. And he has bestowed awakening or nirvana, the path to awakening upon us. Okay, the karmic fruit is immeasurable. Okay, so this is the Buddha. Because of all the Buddha's past wholesome deeds. Okay, anything you do for the Buddha, the karmic fruit is immeasurable. All right, but then, okay, when it comes to our parents, regarding parents, okay, the path to liberation is unknown. Okay, so our parents, okay, are not sure where they stand on the path to liberation. Not only that, furthermore, one need not always obey the words of one's parents. It seems like the Buddha is telling us not to be filial or to be disobedient. Okay, and the Buddha says, why not? Why not obey all the time? It's because there are some who hold false views and who say to their child, bring us to an uninhabited place. You will benefit from this and be happy. That means they ask you to abandon. Or abandon us in the chasm, commit us to the flames. When they say such things, this ought not to be done. Okay, so we have to treat our parents with wisdom. Okay, it doesn't mean everything our parents want or ask for is good for us to blindly obey. Okay, so Buddha says, why not? Well, because through murdering one's parents, one will certainly go to the hell realms. Therefore, the Bhagavan has said not to accept those who have killed their parents into the novitiate, and that such people should not be accepted for full ordination, and for this reason, such people should be shunned. Okay. Now, I'm just quoting the part of the sutra. What the Buddha is trying to say is that there are some cases where we shouldn't obey our parents, such as leaving them to die or murdering our parents, even if they ask. Okay, and it's such a offense that people who commit such offenses are not allowed to leave home. That's what the Buddha is trying to say. So even now, up to the present time, if you have killed your parents, your mother or your father, you're not allowed to leave home. You won't be accepted. So the Buddha says, okay, he established that the merit is the same if whether you honor one's parents or the Buddha is the same. But then now the Buddha says, but the Buddha is different from parents. So now the Buddha asks, so how then are one's parents and preceptors and teachers equal? Okay, so the Buddha explains, says, in this regard, the Buddha has said, parents love their children from the depths of their hearts, or from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, when parents do not give their permission, one should not accept someone into the novitiate. That means one should not accept the person wanting to leave home. Because parents wish for the birth of a son that would uphold their legacy in these 5 areas. So normal people, okay, regular people, why do they want a son or daughter? Says, this son of ours that we will give birth to after being born will support us. He will continue to perform our duties. He will become the inheritor of our wealth. When we die, he or she, will perform the ancestral food offerings, and they will continue the family lineage. So that's why if parents disagree, the Sangha would not accept their child to be a monastic. So number one is that parents love their children from the bottom of their hearts, okay? To the extent that even if the child wants to leave home, but the parents disallow it, the Buddha says, no, the Sangha does not accept, will not accept in honoring the parents' wishes. Now, in the case of the preceptor and the teacher, okay, they have compassion as their priority. So their only concern is so long as he cannot adopt the life of a mendicant because his parents do not give their permission, how will this one who has been wandering in samsara since time immemorial reach the end of suffering? So the Buddha says that the preceptor regards the pupil as a son. The pupil regards the preceptor as a father. Thus, they consider each other parent and child. So the Buddha says, in this regard, the preceptor and the teacher are equal to parents. Okay, you follow the Buddha's explanation so far? All right, now there's a particular sutra called the Wheel-Turning Monarch Sutra, or the Chakravati Sutra, where there's a question. It says, what action leads to the karmic result of the wheel-turning monarch or king obtaining the precious elephant and the precious horse? Now, a wheel-turning king has 7 precious jewels, or 7, what do you call? They're not weapons. They are 7 magical instruments. Okay. And 2 of them is the elephant and the horse. Then I can recall one of them is a wheel, the chakra wheel. And I can't remember what the other 4 is. Anyway, how do you get the precious elephant and the precious horse? Well, the Buddha says, by carrying one's parents around on one's shoulders, or having them mount a carriage drawn by a horse or by an elephant, and carrying one's preceptor and one's teacher oneself. The wheel-turning monarch obtains the precious elephant and the precious horse through the karmic ripening of the action of having others carried. Okay, so you are concerned about how your parents or your teachers or your preceptors get from place to place, and you provide them with what is necessary, or you carry them yourself. You do what's necessary. Okay, so the Buddha says, for this reason too, are parents, the preceptor, and the teacher equal. All right. Then the Buddha says, furthermore, for householders, parents are the object of adoration. For those who have adopted the life of a mendicant, the preceptors and the teachers are the object of adoration. What is object of adoration? We tend to lose this as we grow older, especially midlife. Then when it's only in the we tend to have this understanding in the beginning and at the end of our maturity. In beginning is like how you see children behave with their parents. The parents are everything in their lives. They have any problems or anything, they always turn to their parents because they know they can rely on their parents. Then there's a period after that where they start becoming independent and they have to find their own way, and sometimes that affects the relationship that they have with their parents. And then usually later in life, when they have some time to reflect and they're more matured, then they begin to appreciate their parents again. So the Buddha gives another example. He says, monks, suppose someone took their parents on their back and roamed the Jambu continent with them. That means you go around the entire world, okay? Provided them with provisions and filled the whole of the 4 continents with riches and gold for your parents. Even this kind of generosity could not repay the parents' kindness, okay? But if someone were to cause another person to develop faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, what other person? Your parents, and establish them in the 5 precepts and in the moral conduct that is praised by noble ones, in this way, children will be repaying their parents' kindness. And that is precisely what preceptors and teachers do. All right, you see the similarity? So the Buddha says, it is for this reason that the preceptor and the teacher are more distinguished than the parents. In short, ever since the time of the Buddha's nirvana, all those specified and tame monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen, and whoever else have been pacified and tamed by their preceptors and teachers. So your preceptors and teachers guide you on the right path. Your parents try to guide you. Of course, this is a generalization. It's not applicable to everyone, but usually parents guide you to be a good person, but teachers and preceptors guide you on the path. All right. So this is the last slide for this section. The Buddha says, it is because of this that the Buddha has said, monks, those who believe in my words, should give rise to the highest faith in the Buddha as well as in the Dharma and the Sangha. So they should give rise to the highest faith in their parents, their preceptor, and their teacher. This will lead to their benefit and happiness for a long time to come. And this kind of action leads to the ripening of a karmic result in a foreign country. Okay, that last sentence, I think is related. Okay, if you read the whole sutra, you will see why that last sentence is there. But for our discussion today, it seems a bit out of place. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, we are to the end of our lecture today. Does anyone have anything to bring up, to ask, to share? No? Okay, in that case, then we will transfer merit. Yes, Mudita, you have, please wait. Okay, I will wait. Okay, please ask. Okay, while I'm waiting for Mudita, does anyone remember last week which transference did we do? Did we do the short one or did we do the Abhayagiri one?
I think we did the Abhayagiri one.
Okay, all right, Mudita, I don't understand your question. Is mentioned is not the same? Can you elaborate? Please elaborate the difference, especially on causing harm to either the Buddha and parents. Okay, hold on. Let me see. You mean this? Do you mean this slide? Okay, so your question is, if you cause harm to the Buddha or your parents, is it the same karma? I don't know. Both will merit falling into the hells. Okay, but I think for the Buddha, it is more severe because the repercussions are more severe because the Buddha represents a lot more. The Buddha represents the Dharma as well. So to reject the Buddha is also to reject wisdom. So you may receive a retribution for harming the Buddha, but at the same time, it also reflects that you don't have any respect for wisdom. Whereas in terms of parents, it is, how you say, parents are different from the Buddha because the parents don't represent the same level of wisdom and achievement of the Buddha, also the same level of virtuous qualities. So I think in that aspect alone, because they represent different things, so both will warrant falling into the Avijji hell. But I think there are enough differences there to not to say it is similar, but also not similar. Yeah. So so you're right. You say there are 5 serious karmic results in being born in the Avijji hell, and the first 2 is harming the Buddha. Second one is harming one's parents, and then causing a division in the Sangha. That's number 3. And then the other 2, I don't quite recall. Anyone can remember? Yeah. Okay. So I wouldn't say it's the same karma, but the retribution of falling into the Avicii hell is the same. Yeah, but it's more nuanced than that. I don't think we can like generalize whether it's the same or not. Although falling into the Avicii hells applies for both. Okay. All right.
Sure. Before you stop, I just wonder what is the meaning of preceptors? Is that the person who takes the precepts?
The person who confers the precepts on you.
Oh, the person who confers the precepts on you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. The precept master. Yeah. Okay, let me where's the okay. I'm gonna put my palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see, our hands and hearts can find in giving unity. May our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, I just realized that my sound setting is different. Is it too noisy for y'all today? Okay, if it was, I'm a bit sorry for the background noise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Rebel Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, everyone. We will see you all. Wait, let me see. What next week? What's the date next week? Next week. Yes, we'll see you all next week. Okay, Amitofo.
阿弥陀佛。
Thank you, Master.
Thank you, Master.